talk about my methodology of how I am going to decide what to cut and what not to cut. Now, actually, I am really thrilled with the way the entire box performed. I really did not think it could handle this intense exposure as well as it has, but it has performed just in a spectacular fashion, I think. And I love the fact that even though it has been, I've said it a lot, but it's been consistently in the hundreds for the past week. Look at how all of this lantana is still blooming profusely. This in the window box, this in this urn that I've got with a topiary, and I am definitely going to record that for next year in my garden journal that I want to plant even more lantana next year. I may mix up my color palette, but nevertheless, it not only is a brilliant performer, but it also attracts all of those beautiful butterflies that you see everywhere in my garden that I just so love. Okay, before I get to the window box, this is a common, I think, decision point we all have right now, and that is the half-dead pot of annuals. And what do we do with it? Stuart, I'm going to move this over into the shade a little bit before I'm going to strangulate it a little bit. It's on drip irrigation. So this is Scaviola. This is actually, I believe, an Australian native. At one time, it was absolutely beautiful. It was as beautiful as the lantana, but I have found it's not as tough, and it has succumbed to the heat, obviously, not only here, but I also had it planted in the various urns that are run up and down my walkway to the front porch, and it expired in those too. So here would be my question. At this point, it's a decision point. Some of it's dead, and I could clip it out and then try to salvage the green and what remains. But you know what? I am not going to do that. If I chose to do that, what I would do is cut out all of the dead. I would clip back the green a little bit, and then as soon as it cooled down, I would start really vigorously and aggressively feeding it. And I would just feed it with anything. A Miracle Grow would be fine. In my containers, I've said before, I'm not that concerned about being organic. But I'm not going to do that because I am over it. I'm tired of seeing this dead-looking pot right here. I don't really care if it comes back out and is profuse again in a month and a half, because by then I will have moved on. And since it isn't here as a companion plant and as a sister or brother of the other ones that I had in the urns, then there's not really any reason for me to keep it. So off to the compost pile it will go, or I'll just put it out, pull it out. And since this soil is still relatively new, I will just amend it a little bit and plant something else in it. So that's what I am going to do at this decision point. Here is my question of the day. What would you do? Would you save it or would you toss it? So that's my question of the day. Now, as promised, let's move on to the window box. So first, what I'm going to do is I am going to harvest any, and I'm still excited that I have some tomatoes and that they just haven't fried or they haven't been eaten by some critter. And can I just say, how beautiful do they look in that little blue and white bowl? So before I consume them, they may have to be a still life for a while. So you can see on this side, wow. Okay, Stuart, can I get you to walk over here, because this is how rambunctious it has gotten. You can't see this from the street, and you really the messiness of it is largely camouflaged by this boxwood topiary in the front, and these lemon lime nandinas in the foreground. So I really didn't even notice it till the other day. But there are lots of tomatoes on here. Now I'm going to go ahead. What?
Look at all those tomatoes.
Oh, I know. I thought you just were stung by a wasp or something,
no,
Stuart.
I didn't see all the tomatoes right now.
Yeah, no, look, there's a whole bunch of them. So, gosh, you scared me.
I'm sorry.
I thought, oh my gosh, a giant mosquito carried you away or something. So I'm going to cut off all of these and I'm going to harvest them. Okay, now.
Tomatoes back there.
I know, yes, there's all sorts of them. And aren't they so dear? I mean, they're just so dear. And whoever said flowers had to be the things that you cut to add beauty to your home or to your dining room table? Tomato down. Okay, so it's very, very pretty. I think they're pretty in their green state or in their orange state, obviously. So I'm going to cut all of those, including the green ones. Now, what will I do with the green ones? Well, I'm sure some of you, and if you know, and by the way, I have my Bergen and Ball favorite pruners right here for exacting work. Love these. Boy, and a bunch of you decided you love them too, because they've been flying off the shelves. But I'm going to get my big pruners for this because the stalk on these, the stem on these is really, really big. So I am going to cut off.
I wonder if I can show them.
Can you see that, Stuart?
I think so.
Okay, I'm going to cut off these mammoth vines, vining tomatoes. Okay, some of them, look, they were even crawling up the wall. An effect that, by the way, I love. And yes, those little yellow flowers do look like little Tweety birds.
What the?
Okay.
This
Yes.
is why you heard me say what I said.
Okay, because you didn't know it was over there. Well, I don't know that that's what I said when I discovered it, because I am a delicate flower and I don't talk like that, Stuart.
What did I say? Was it bad?
You said, holy crap.
Oh, okay. That wasn't so bad.
So, anyhow, I am going to cut all of these. Now, the green ones, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them in a paper bag, and they will continue to ripen in the paper bag as long as I put some already ripe ones along with them. That way, these will not go to waste. If you guys have some recipes for like a green tomato salsa or something like that, Leah's nodding her head vigorously. Please make me some.
Please.
Yeah, please make me some. But also just send me your recipe. Okay, so a little bit later I will go through and I will cut off all of these. Now, did you notice, and yes, I think that is just so pretty like that. Now, you will notice that I'm not tearing it out. I'm just cutting it back. And what it will do is put out new growth that is more fresh. It's not so battered by the heat and by August. It's still in place. See, there's still, man, there's a lot of them. But the plant itself will remain, and I will begin to feed it too. And here's an example, Stuart, of where I'm going to cut it back. So, and by the way, I can do this pretty much any time during the summer if it's getting overly aggressive. I was kind of just enjoying seeing how big it would grow. But I'm going to clip it right here. See where there's that new shoot coming out? I'm going to clip it right there.
What kind of tomatoes are these?
These were sun gold tomatoes, and I really wasn't sure how big they would get. I know it's a really common classic tomato, but I wasn't sure how big it would get. I did not anticipate it getting this big, but it's been very, very fun. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to cut it right there. While I am cutting off these big canes, and by the way, you could do these you could do the same thing in your vegetable garden, in your raised container beds. I'm going to cut off any foliage that just looks a little bit tattered and unsightly. I kind of like the effect of this growing up the wall, so I'm gonna leave it there. You concur, okay. So now I'm going to tackle this tomato. This is how hot it's been, peppers. This is how hot it's been. It's been so hot that even these peppers are curling up. Look at that. It almost looks distorted or as if it's diseased or something. And indeed, maybe it is, but I'm not going to find out. I'm going to go ahead and cut it off again at a similar juncture at the base where there's still some foliage that's coming out. But look, I have things to harvest on here as well. This exposes another branch here, which I'm going to take off. Like everything, you do one thing and it tells you what to do next. So I imagine I'll have some peppers here. And just in case, I really think this has just had heat stroke, but in case it's diseased or something, I will not put this in the compost pile. I will put it in the trash. So this gives, oh heavens no, tomatoes will not go in the trash. So here, I'm just cutting back more pepper. Even if it has some buds on it that will turn into peppers, right now I just want to contain its size more than I want to have peppers right now. And then I'm just going to cut off any of the dead. Same here with that pepper. Now even this purple Joseph's coat needs a little bit of a haircut. And I think what I will do here, and yes, it will look a little bit sad at first, but I'm going to put these in the shade and I'm going to bring these in and I'm going to root them, which reminds me about the big contention about root or root. And by the way, I find these kind of distinctions just absolutely fascinating because to me they are colloquial. They are very much a geographic thing. I can hear right now, I can hear my mother say root. We grew up in Indiana and the distinction was maybe the roots of a stem or the roots of a plant, but it was to root things, you rooted them. So that was kind of the distinction. Some of you have said, well, it just drives me crazy how you say that. Well, to that I would say, then you must not travel very much to other parts of the world or of the country because everywhere people talk differently and I love it. I find it fascinating. And I also find it interesting to Google. So to see if, okay, is what I'm saying really, really strange? No, you'll find out that people in the Midwest, a lot of them say it that way. Just like they say roof instead of roof.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I digress.
How do you say root beer?
I say it root beer. Okay, so I'm going to come back in here and I'm just going to keep clipping what I want to clip. There's stuff down in here you can't see. But I'm going to take some of these cuttings, and where I'm creating more space and more air is kind of on the back side. Now right here, we're going to take a break as I refer to the back side, and we're going to go inside so you guys can see what it looks like from inside my bathroom. Now, just before we move to the other side, I want to point something out. I really have cut this back and it will give more breathing room to some of the other things in here that were really being thugged out, like this Chef's Choice rosemary. It's a Southern Living plant and it will now have considerably more breathing room and it will thrive. I'm not going to cut everything off that's shading it because it's tender because it's been under the shade of some of this overgrown vegetation. So, but the other thing that I wanted to point out is it was right here on this spot that I noticed that the light is changing. The angle of the light is changing from its summer angle to its autumnal angle, and I just love it. It's becoming more golden, and I have to say that just as an image, I love the way that tomato vine is cascading up in front of that brick. So now let's speed this up a little bit, Stuart. getting a little bit hot, but you can definitely see that even though the lantana and everything else still looks full and effusive, that the sides have been tamed a little bit. It's really hot. I am really glistening. So I'm going to go back inside now with my bowl of tomatoes. Why don't you guys come with me? Out to me, there's a lot of labor involved in this. I mean, just to get somebody to come to your home to make 2 different trips before they even apply what it is and install what it is you are buying, that in and of itself is almost worth what I spent. So that helped me put it in perspective, not feel as if I was making an expensive mistake, and I cannot wait to see it executed. It will get here. As I said, it was custom laser cut, and I think they're going to install it on Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, which coincidentally is also when they're going to come out and install my window in the great room. So I definitely will be looking at the world through different lenses. Well, it may be too hot to plant, but it's not too hot to plan. And that's what I'm doing right now as it relates to most of my boxwood balls. I'm thinking of it as boxwood ball bingo. I'm just moving things around until I become a winner and I get the effect that I want. So I always have kind of a starting point. And my starting point here is actually the entirety of the garden, because I look at it and I'm going to start doing kind of a schematic of where the evergreens are in the upper terrace, because it can be kind of difficult to see that right now because there's so many things in bloom. But why am I wanting to do that? Because I want to make sure that this area has winter evergreen interest in addition to just the foliar interest and the floral interest that I have right now. In other words, I don't want them to look barren in winter. There is such a thing as a winter garden, and I want to make sure that this is as attractive and almost as compelling in winter as it is in the summer. So I'm making note of where I have different evergreens. I mean, you can see the obvious ones. I've got some really large boxwood balls, but then I also have several smaller boxwood balls and even smaller yet kind of boxwood balls to be, like this one over here. So one thing what I'm going to be doing this fall is I'm going to be taking out some of these candy butterfly because I planted them too densely, not being really that familiar with their growth habit, and I'll transplant them someplace else. And then I will be adding more evergreens, more primarily boxwood balls. So where am I going to get the boxwood balls? Well, this is where it comes in. It's kind of like a set of dominoes. And this is how my brain works, as scary as that may be, Stuart. So I look at this one and I think, okay, this one is beautiful and it's about to outgrow its pot. So this one really needs to be planted in the ground. So when it cools off, when I pull out some of these annuals that are starting to look a little straggly, then I will decide the perfect placement for this boxwood ball, as I will for all of this foxglove that is growing at the base. Now, it's too hot to do this now, but I'm already thinking about the future. But I like the position of this evergreen here in a pot. So I want the pot to remain. Okay, so what then am I going to put in this pot to replace this one that is a little bit too overgrown? Well, I've got 2 different options. But probably the one I'm going to go with is this one, because this one is a little bit too overgrown for its container, and I will move this one to the larger container over there. So it's like hopscotch. I'm referencing every kid's game there is, but this one will then move over there. Okay, then I have an empty pot. So what is going to go in here then, you say? Well, then I will probably put this topiary either in that pot.
Which one?
this
that
one right
Sorry,
here.
I was looking at the one behind
Yeah,
us.
because it's getting a little bit too large for this pot. And
But
this
not-
is one, by the way, that I started from scratch. I started it as a baby. So I can either move it to that pot, or where I am more likely to move it. Are you keeping up?
I think
I
so.
need a little graph.
Yeah.
I need a little graph. Where I'm more likely to put it is in this pot, because this pot doesn't have an evergreen in it at all, and in the winter it will just look empty. So probably, because this is a large container, it is heavy, it is very, very durable, very heavy, and it, I think, will very much protect the root zone of that topiary. So in all likelihood, I will move that topiary into here, and this Sedum Autumn Joy I'm going to use on Autumn's Edge, because I don't have any of it in there, and I want to put more of it in there. So that one I am going to move here. And that's just kind of how my brain works. Some of the topiary that's on the front porch may go live on the back steps. I'm not 100% sure. I might even get some more boxwood. I am beyond thrilled with the performance of the better boxwood. I mean, it is 104 and it has not skipped a beat. Everywhere, in every single location, it is handling the elements absolutely beautifully. It is making a beautiful, shiny, evergreen ground cover now, and later it will be a shrub, more of a shrubbish ground cover, and I love the way it looks, and I also love the way the evergreen forms, the balls, the cones, the topiary look in winter, especially when they have a dusting of snow.
There's no way that's the basil.
That is the basil.
There's no way.
Yes, it is, Stuart. That basil started out like this one right here.
Yep. That's great.
And it's just overgrown. I need to cut it back. While we're standing here, I'm going to see if any of this, I'm letting this one go to seed, because this will be really prized seed once it does go to seed. And it's not quite dry enough yet. It's not quite dry. But inside there, it's impossible for you to see right now, but inside there will be little black seeds. There's one. Okay, there's one. And I'm letting all of this go to seed, because now I know how prized a plant this is. And I think you mentioned it, Stuart, because it looks so much like boxwood, i.e. boxwood basil. So I will let all of this dry and go to seed, and I will save lots of the seed, because I will be planting it everywhere on both terraces. My design objective for next year is to have this side maybe resemble this side a little bit more. So that's just, I'm just kind of working on that. But that's kind of how my mind works, is, you know, I just find a starting point, a need. Then I find something that might be able to fit that need, starting out first with something I already have. And then I've created a void. What can I use to fill that void? Preferably something I already have. And so it's just, okay, the only game I haven't referenced, I guess, is pinball, Stuart. So whether you play bingo, you play hopscotch, you play dominoes, or you play pinball, all of those analogies are great when it's too hot to plant and you are trying to plan your garden. Have a great Sunday, you guys, and that's the garden life.